Welcome back to Ask the Educator, a podcast for all professionals involved in medical device processing and sponsored by Healthmark Industries. The education team here at Healthmark has 280 years of combined experience in areas ranging from sterile processing, endoscopy, OR, biomed, to hospital and industry leadership. Our goal is to leverage our collective experience to answer one of your questions each episode, giving you the practical tips you need to succeed in the evolving world of device processing. My name is Kevin Anderson, clinical educator here at Healthmark, and I will be your host. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask the Educator. This is Kevin Anderson, and it's been a few weeks now, so it's really good to get back and record some podcasts and get them out there. You may remember, if you've been listening, a couple episodes back, we were starting on a survey readiness series, and Sharon Rojo and I briefly brought up the topic of Eyewash stations, but really wanted to get into that a little bit more because it is very important for survey readiness. And for this great topic, I thought I'd bring on Stephen Kovach. So Stephen, thanks again for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, Kevin, thank you very much. And, this topic is near and dear to me, and a lot of people don't think much of eyewash stations, but I want to do this quick little anecdotal story for you. Today, I went into our headquarters, and as usual, our facility staff was just doing excellent work here. And so I went up to Alec, the facilities manager, and I said, Alec, it always amazes me how clean and everything is there. Tell your staff that. He says, Steve, that was nice to hear. He says, I tell the staff they have to be audit and show ready. And show ready is, we used to bring customers in, but because of COVID, it's harder, but now they'll be coming back. It's the impression that somebody gets in when they walk in our facilities. And that's very important. And that's what you're talking about. How to make your department audit ready, no matter what time or where or who comes in, or even a visitor, the VP or somebody comes in your department. So eyewash stations, most of us, I really don't look at it, but I want to start off with this point is, it doesn't matter whether you have Joint Commission or any of the groups auditing your department, they get their direction from CMS. CMS gives them the authorization to come in, and you get the certificate, and then you can get the reimbursement and so on. So as a sterile processing professional, people should also be looking at CMS updates, because within CMS updates, there's a lot of information. And there was one a couple years ago that I sent to you, Kevin. Do you remember what it was I sent to you? What was that update about?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that was a great little resource that unfortunately I do not recall ever seeing this, but it had to do with Legionella infections and how to prevent the spread of Legionellas in healthcare facilities. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and bring that up? I think it's something that most of us probably don't think about when it comes to eyewash stations, but just share with us, like, how is this connected? I would have never thought of this.
Yeah, it deals also, it dovetails into ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, and the CDC. And healthcare facilities were put on the watch that surveyors are going to review policies and procedures and report with water management, and where water would be touched by a patient or staff. And they listed so many places that they would be looking, and they were going to look in aerators, faucet flow restrictors, shower heads, and guess what? Ice machines, cooling towers. But here was one, eyewash stations. Eyewash stations was on there. So if CMS is putting these alerts out, who's going to be reading them? The Joint Commission surveyors or the other surveyors. And now they're going to be coming into your department and looking at this. And I know you have some experience. But again, when it comes to an eyewash station, we just think of ST79. We think of OSHA. Now you got to think of ANSI, but there's also an eyewash station, American National Standard called Z358 that we'll touch. But you yourself have been in departments recently that audited. And what have you seen, Kevin, before we get into some of the details,
Yeah, well, first of all, I would just say that in my experience with surveyors, it is a very common thing for them to look at is the eyewash station. One, is it there? Two, is it up to standard? And three, is their documentation of the checks being done? And those are the high level quick hits that they look at. However, being on, the Healthmark side of things and getting the chance to be a guest in other facilities, you see all kinds of things that you kind of, forget about because you're used to one facility, when you're working all the time and how it's set up and all of that. But it's very common to see things pushed in front of an eyewash station. A big garbage barrel is standing there, or even garbage on the floor we've seen just thrown in front of eyewash stations. And as you know, and we might, we're going to bring up, is that these things need to be, free of obstruction. People need to be able to access these things in a hurry. And garbage barrels and garbage bags sitting in front of them is a no-no. And another one that we see sometimes is eyewash stations that are in a decontam sink, which again is another no-no. But these are the common things. I think that there's, another one would be the documentation side of things, which is what we touched on very briefly in this episode with Sharon. But it is one of those things where people assume facilities is checking it. Sometimes the log is right there on the wall. Sometimes it's not. So if it's not, you better know where that log is. You better know who's checking it, how often. Are they checking the temperature? That was one that they asked us last time they came through my department. So those are all the kinds of things that right now is really common for me to be seeing. What about you?
Well, I'm going to stick with the documentation and I'm going to try to dovetail the standards together.
Sure.
One of the things that I see is that the eyewash station is installed properly, and many of them come with a little green OSHA tag or whatever, and it's got the twist tie on it, and it says date inspected and so on. And the people still have that sitting there, and it's never filled out. But then they have maybe something on the wall that's filled out. So which tag is being used or who is doing it? So if you keep a tag around that eyewash station, it's not filled out, that's going to put a red flag out. So take it off if you're not using it. And you just said it, if your facilities is doing it, you need to check those logs and make sure there's no blank missing or whatever. So it's interesting that you said about the water temperature. And I want to share this. Remember, a lot of us just say AMI ST79, but we forget that there's ANSI before it, the American National Standards Institute. There is an ANSI standard called Z358.1, which deals with eyewash stations. And it says weekly activation of emergency shower and eyewashes to confirm proper operation along with thorough annual inspection. And an annual inspection is more detailed. It says tepid water is specific. And here's what's very interesting. Why tepid water? If an emergency eyewash unit provides water that is too hot or too cold, it can injure a worker and may be exposed to additional serious injury. So they actually give the temperature range between 60 and 100 degrees F. So you need to make sure, and then it goes on 1 minute, some are 3 minutes. You've got to let it run to make sure it stays at that constant temperature. And I see in many departments, people do not write down the temperature. So that's one of the big faux pas I see. So now let's go over to the ANSI AMI ST79 document. They have a little more wording that they've dovetailed through OSHA and other requirements that says a decontam area must have an emergency eyewash shower station. Not the bottles, but it's got to be a continuous flow. Suitable eyewash and shower equipment must be available with unobstructed access for immediate emergency use in all locations where potential damaged chemicals are housed, or even EO sterilizers, that's a chemical, located within 10 seconds travel time, identified with a highly visible, maintained in accordance with the manufacturer's IFU, tested and documented. Eyewash stations should not be in a location that requires flushing of eyes and a decontam sink. This is the next biggest possible demerit check mark people have. Many eyewash stations are over a decontam sink, and they were built many years ago. Mm-hmm. So here's what people need to do. They need to get with their risk management, infection control facilities and go from there. And Kevin, I think you've heard the same comment from people. Hopefully I'll put it the right way. And this pertains to eyewash and everything with audits. Somebody says, Joint Commission came through and we're all set. They didn't say anything about the eyewash, so we're okay. Well, just because somebody didn't see it doesn't mean it's okay when you know it's wrong and they didn't write you up. You know, have you sort of heard that statement before in general, Kevin, as we've audited?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people go by their own experiences in general, or the experiences of people within their health system, which is great. It's great to share information and support each other and help each other get prepared for a survey. But as we all know, no one surveyor from Joint Commission or CMS is going to be able to audit to every single little detail every time. And this is something that we have to treat with the utmost importance, as we talked about it being a potential reservoir for Legionellas, or a potential eye-saving wash for anyone who contaminates their eyes. So if you're concerned about your employees' safety, you should be making sure that these things are available, up to standard, and running appropriately. And that's just part of being a good employee or a good manager, a good leader, whatever. Don't wait for someone to come into your department and, write you up or, cite you for this thing before you do something about it.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, and you and I were just at an audit and they did have it. I see a lot of the caps either broken or they're off, but I honestly have a figure. I should write something on this. 60% of the places I've audited, when you remove the cap, you'll find some white stuff. Now, it could be just calcium or whatever, but you don't know if people fooled with the caps or whatever, and you push it and the water goes. How do you know it's not squirting something out into somebody's eye? But if you look at that top of it, and if we were able to do this visually, I'd show some pictures to everybody of places I've audited where there is just white crud on those little things that push the water out. And people don't look at it. It's your department. You need to take ownership. And you know what? So what? Somebody else is supposed to look at it. Part of your manager daily, I had a milk run, is what I called it. Every day I'd walk through different things and even walk down the hallway in the OR, and they got to know me. But you got to see some of those things. And if you put it on your list, it might be what you look at on Wednesday or Thursday, but you've got to be audit ready. And that's another area I think managers should do. I want to share this one little tidbit. I know we're at about 10, 12 minutes. We're trying to keep it around 15. Now, this is about a 4 or 5 years old citation. But again, remember I said, look on CMS. You can go on OSHA's website and they publish monthly the fines that they've given out. Now, most of them are industrial, but again, their fines usually go between 100,000 and can go up to 1 million. And there was a claim of excess injury due to a non-compliant drench shower or eyewash station that gave high risk. The place got a $213,000 fine for a blocked eyewash. Blocked eyewash. Now, there was a reason for it. The employee, it was blocked and couldn't get to it and so on, and doesn't name the facility and all that. But I know I don't want to have a blocked eyewash. And that was an OSHA inspector. Now, Joint Commission can't do that, CMS, but we know if OSHA comes into a hospital, it's free reign. They can go wherever they want and do whatever they want. So that's why you have to be audit ready, show ready. And I thank Alec at our facilities for giving me that quote. And again, you don't use bottles. In our area, you'll go in a lot of factories and they'll have bottles. Our area cannot have bottles. It's got to be a continuous flush.
Hands-free too, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. See, that's why there's two of us, Kevin. I was ready to wrap it up, and that's right. It's got to be hands-free.
Yeah.
That's very important. And Healthmark is coming out with this really unique little tool that you can just put it on your eyewash station, and the water will hit it, and it'll read the temperature for your 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, and you can let it run and come back and check it out. So that's a little tidbit. Look for that coming out for us very, very soon. So anyways, I think people need to start looking at their eyewash, because when we audit, I see a lot of possible infractions. How's that, Kevin?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And it's an easily overlooked item that I believe is an easy one for auditors to find. So one last thing that I would say before we wrap up is don't forget to consider the clean side of your department. We always think about this on the decontam side, but we're using vaporized hydrogen peroxide. We might have alcohol or other cleaning solutions for the environment on the clean side. We have sterilants, things like that. It could happen where there's an exposure on the clean side, whether you like to think of it or not on the clean side. It could happen. You may need an eyewash station on that side of your department if the other one isn't within, 10 seconds travel time, and it can't be separated by more than one doorway or something like that.
You got to read all the, you got to read the fine print, like when you sign for your house or something,
That's right. So anyway, I just wanted to share this great information about the eyewash station, help you all out there get ready for your surveys. I know that this is a big time for everybody, so I hope that helps. Steve, as always, thank you so much for your input and sharing your experience with this.
I'm glad you wanted to talk eyewash. Thanks, Kevin, and we'll see you around. And everybody keep it clean and be safe. We'll see you, buddy.
That wraps up the latest installment of our Survey Readiness series. In this episode, I spoke with Stephen Kovach about the importance of the eyewash stations. These are really easy, low-hanging fruit for surveyors because, like Stephen mentioned, it's on everyone's radar, like ANSI, Amy, OSHA, CMS, and others. So what is it that you need to know about these eyewash stations or showers? Well, they must have hands-free operation. They must have continuous flow, which means we can't have those bottles anymore that we used to put on the wall. They have to be available within 10 seconds travel time with no more than one door in their path. They have to be communicated with a highly visible sign, and they cannot be installed on any sinks that are used for decontamination purposes. They must be maintained according to IFU. They've got to be tested at least weekly for flow and water temperature. And what water temperature, you ask? It's got to be between 60 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And lastly, these critical pieces of safety equipment, they have to have unobstructed access. This is a lot of requirements for something we often forget about. So like Stephen says, always be show ready or survey ready. Don't get dinged on your next survey for the eyewash station. I hope this was very helpful for you and your survey preparation. I want to thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to podcasts. All opinions expressed on this show are those of the presenters. Before using any medical device, it is important to review the device manufacturer's instructions for use.